I don't know if anybody out there can relate to this, or you have the gift of that, to be able to sit in somebody's company and without ego, without agenda, without one-upmanship, without any kind of competition whatsoever, just have discussion. I seen a little bit of, was it Flatzoid with Fight the Fat Tits, and he was asked about why is it more difficult to walk up a hill than it is on a flat ground, and you could see the immediate triggered response because he knows he's backed into a corner, because they don't have a factor for why things are sorting themselves, buoyancy, density, pressure gradient. They don't have a response, because you can't have any of these things in a stationary system. A stationary system has no vector. We live with a vector, a direction, an orientation. We live in a system with a gradient. The antecedent to these things is motion, force. Again, for people that don't comprehend that, when people mention the word force, they're talking about motion. It's human beings' language to try and quantify change, motion. That's what the whole basis of science is. We observe change, then we try and figure out what caused the change. Change is motion. You cannot have change without motion. This is why it's crippling to this whole topic when these flat earthers continually bash their heads off a brick wall and go round and round in circles saying things that don't make any sense whatsoever, and constantly repeat mantras that they've heard from gatekeepers online telling them they are stationary, it's measured flat. Stuff sorts itself out into gradients just because it's impulses and stuff. Me and Andrew have demonstrated this. Again, variables. We can invert it. We can make buoyancy and density go in any direction you want. I can change air from rising through water that way to going that way, because whatever direction we accelerate it in, left, right, diagonally, up, down, that's what happens. Air goes towards the direction of travel and water behind it, and then the solid materials behind that. Simple. But these other people, whether it's globe earthers or stationary flyers, they don't have variables, they can't change and manipulate anything. All they have is statements, incredulous interpretations of optical phenomena with no physics to back it whatsoever. That's why I brought this up, the communication thing, because there's people like you and many others out there that are honest and intellectually honest, that just go with what reality's showing them without bias. And as some of you have said, at first you had maybe had that little emotional knee-jerk reaction to have an aversion to it, but your honesty shines through when you stick with it, and you can break through your own bias and admit that what you're experiencing and what you're witnessing is the truth. But it's difficult to have that communication when people operate from bias, from Dunning-Kruger, from incredulity. So it's very, very hard. And again, it's not just stationary flat earthers. I'm talking about globe earthers. Globe earthers are intellectually dishonest also. I said at the very beginning of this, I don't have a horse in any race. I'm no bias to what the earth is, whether it's a triangle, a square, a circle. I don't care. That would only matter to me if I had some deep-rooted belief, bias about my perceptions of what the world is, and projecting what I want it to be. That's when the struggle comes, when you can't just accept what it actually is. Many times have you heard this about relationships? People are so blinded by their own perception that it doesn't matter what you put in front of them, they're still going to deny. Because people do that. That's part of the psychological schism of man. Because even if it's a falsity, it's something that they're used to. It's a comforter. Even if their whole belief system is blatantly false, it comforts them. And they'll cling to it, and they'll fight tooth and nail and argue against the facts in order to maintain that bias. That's a very real thing. You know, for me, what I would like next is that to see honesty in the communication. You know, and regardless of which side people are on, which I don't get. I've never understood why globe earthers came with this attitude of you against them or us against them. I don't get that. I mean, we all share the same reality. Why are people invested in some sort of bias where they have to form camps against opposers? Just have a discussion. You know, conversations can be good and discussions can be good, and I've been lucky enough to have, you know, like Marty in my life where, you know, and I don't know if anybody out there can relate to this or you have the gift of that, to be able to sit in somebody's company and without ego, without agenda, without, you know, one-upmanship, without any kind of competition whatsoever, just have discussion. You know, what topic is it? Right, this is the topic, let's discuss it then. Let's look at it from different angles and convey different ways of thinking. How are you thinking about it? I'm thinking this, or you're thinking, oh, I see that, that's, you know, whatever happened to that? When did we become so hell-bent on beating each other? At what point did this become a competition? And again, I try and always have compassion and, you know, keep that olive branch extended, because sometimes it just takes a little more time for people for the penny to drop. And again, you know, I spoke about this in the early years about being repetitive, because the truth is repetitive. And if you stand by the truth and it's repetitive, then, you know, people eventually are going to think, well, what's going on here? That's not going away, and maybe the penny's going to drop. I don't hold any expectation, but there's still a slight little bit of hope. That's the humanity in me, you know.